example, had the September guarantees sorted out with the starters, but they may not have started. So the college we have a formal agreement with them, but they do tend to drag the reels, but that puts more pressure on our staff. And obviously, having just gone through the area-based grant losses, our staff have been drastically reduced. So I'm trying to meet that element, as well as keep on top of these guys as well. It's quite, you know, it was fantastic. So we've got another couple this afternoon that come from the youth offending legal care background, but we've never had an opportunity to get employment within Blackpool, virtually guaranteed work. So after this meeting, we've got a few calls to make, haven't we, just to make sure that we've gotten right. But we're getting there because it's through sheer hard work, and as Jeff really epitomised to us when he came up to do the initial meetings, it is all about hard work and how you get off the backside and you get out there. It's not a case of sitting behind a desk using a telephone or sending an email. It's that proactiveness, knowing your client group, knowing what's available in that area, and marrying the two up. But it's the aftercare that comes in with it as well. You can't just put them into a position and say, right, there you go, Adam, we'll see you in a couple of years, mate, you know, long sign you off. It's that aftercare and the support. And if we've not got the financial support to back it, it's just never going to happen. And especially if that money's not just within the public sector, it's the financial backing in the private and third sector as well. Because if they can't offer these opportunities, it's a non-starter, basically.
I think it's a relationship as well, where I found, as you say, the difficulty of working with young people in and out of the time that you're professionally there to support them, and then finding that they'll ring you up at the most unexpected times for advice, because that's what they need. And again, it came back to, you know, as you go, there are professional lines that you're not able to cross, but then finding that they needed to develop some of those skills themselves. That it was, by way of Elliott's introduction, we've been working with Elliott for 5 years now, Elliott.
I've actually met Elliott before at I think when the Children's Commissioner came up last time.
That's right. And he came to one of the Blackpool workshops.
That's right,
And he sat there all day.
Elliott was the case study right at the very end.
There you go. Well, I thought it was important that you see him some years on.
Yeah.
Because it was Elliott that really sort of challenged me and inspired me. In that, you know, we gave them a bit of sport, and we were good at getting people into sport. And there were a lot of agencies doing lots of things once they decided they want to make something of their lives. But then you get a mother turning up saying, well, they've gone this way, or they've been let down, or they've fallen behind or through the net. And that's why the Youthwise program said, well, if we can get them engaged, why can't we see them employed? And we'd had some relative success in Moss Side. And when you've got the major games, as we have with the Manchester Olympic and the Commonwealth Games, the legacy stuff would give us some currency, because you do get the private sector, you do get the public sector. Sometimes the policy is weak because everyone's thinking about the big event, but we realised that an opportunity could present itself. And it was one when I went to Blackpool and I was asked to go up there. It had all the ingredients, because I knew that the inner city gang members were running away just to escape, as most young people do. But it just was a unique mix of social needs. But Elliott's had come to a soulful need. School had given up on him. In fact, everybody had given up on him. But the one thing I do remember is Elliott was not able to sit down for anything more than 30 seconds. He couldn't do it. By ADHD, medicated up to his eyeballs. So I treated him as a young athlete and gave him what I would have got. Then you've got to get used to the brothers and the sisters, because they all come as part of that experience. Before I knew it, I was coaching a young squad. That's how I had to do it, or else it would have overwhelmed me. Social services hadn't bothered. By the way, Corinne wasn't a mother when I last met her. She was supposed to be doing her A-levels. And she is the brightest of her year group. But all of a sudden, a number of social impacting areas of emotional challenge, and before you knew it, and the mum was bringing it, and there was another mother by way of her elder sister. And all of a sudden, I'm trying to make sense of the folks that he's an uncle now, he's having to get to grips with that. He's not got to college yet, but it was in being able to give him what very much became Youthwise2Work, and as you saw him, he came with me. So I said, well, I experienced, you'll experience. And I get the horror stories, but it was when I was in London. I got a text message from his mum, and she went, "Go to YouTube," and they'd nearly killed him again with drink and drugs, and it was all posted. And I went, "This is the means we're going to have to use, not only to communicate with them, but to encourage them, to coach them, to text them, and use the multimedia age and the social networking culture that they have, because it is their culture. But then, more importantly, we can provide, as you said, one thing that has always surprised me is the sheer inaccuracy of, as you say, you can only take the experiences of 20, and then as a result of that, it can impact and change policy in a significant way. And you know Connections has worked well in some areas, far better than others. But for me, what I felt was lacking was the individual buying, the individual responsibility, and the individual motivation.
Well, we've actually pulled that in out there, because obviously I...
So, I don't think what they
So, what incapacity benefits or which one do you get?
DLA.
DLA, okay, fine. And job seekers allowance as well?
No,
Okay, right. So you're not actually, so you're getting DLA, but you're not on other benefits?
Pardon?
You're getting DLA, disability living allowance, but you're not on other benefits?
Alright.
I think one of the things that's going to hit everybody to some extent regarding learning or progressing is, and we only found out 2 weeks ago, is the loss of EMA in January. We knew EMA was on a downward spiral anyway, but to find out it had been brought forward so quickly that where's the feedback we're getting from learners now, or potential learners, is I just can't afford now to preempt or plan anything for the future. I can't afford to look at foundation learning. I can't afford to look at FE or anything like that, purely because we've got no guarantee of what's replacing or what's going to be happening from January onwards. So it's better. It's like you mentioned Blackpool Foyer earlier. I used to work there. I used to be one of the managers at Blackpool Foyer. So another side of the kids not getting out of bed is the fact that the staff at times are inept and aren't encouraging them to get out of bed. That is another. So I can actually say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But from experience working in environment support accommodation, for example, the incentive for them to get out of bed was that EMA, that was the carrot. Now, no carrot. It's far easier for me to stay in bed, especially if I'm under 18, estranged, so I'm going to get my JSA. What's the point in me going out to do something, say, let's parks of a built environment. Why should I go out and pour in there in the cold for the same money that I'm getting when I could stay in bed? And that's what everybody's looking at the moment. We're trying our damnedest to try and encourage young people that, irrespective of what you'll be getting during that period, and there possibly is going to be something to replace it. There will be incentives, whether it's fed through the college system or the FE system, etc. Yeah, if the funding's done through that way, it's letting them know. It's for us to be able to market that and advocate on what the government's doing. It's difficult at the moment because I've got teenagers myself, I've got 3 same as you, Jeff, and it is a case of, I can tell them, so I'm blue in the face, that this, that and the other's going to happen, and they're going to turn around and say, where's your proof? Show me.
I mean, it's very much a consumer generation that they need to see it to believe it, and even then, they want to make sure that if they take that very cautious but at the same time positive step, it's immediately matched. And I think that's been, it certainly was revealing when I went to the foyers, and it just reaffirmed all the work we've done with you and Connections in looking at those that were just leaving their final year at primary school is where I had to start, as they then entered into secondary school, the challenges that they faced, and as you know, the Connections role within those schools as part of what you're going to do, that if they'd already failed in their exams, I knew the alternative side, as I say, it's another Home Office area and portfolio, but another cost and impact on society. But how can we intervene, but map, track, incentivise them, and get it all sorts of making a picture that gives you an easier negotiable time, both in policy, lobby and resource. And the foyer has really brought it home to me. In fact, it shook me. I'd never realised that many young people, as you say, they were I couldn't even begin to make sense of all the different allowances they were getting.
Yeah.
And some were getting more than others, which caused issue. But the fundamental bottom line was, for those who got their £40, the only thing that mattered to them was this and drugs. I said, not food, no, they had one meal a week, and that was because they helped clean the foyer. You know, the outside, apart from their rooms, they cleaned the foyer, then the cleaner actually became the mother for the Friday and made them a breakfast.
Well, this with the MA, if I go back to...
This is education maintenance allowance.
Yeah, if I go back just to, not just employment, but any support and accommodation for a young person, they can afford, I mean, Blackpool Fridays, that's an example, £145 per week, that's the rent, which then £2 service charge on top. Now, if they were to go to FE, get their income support, get their EMA, fantastic, it's nothing's affected.
Yeah.
So if they lose that, the only option really for the moment is to try and get into employment or apprenticeship, which we really do push for.
Yeah.
Or even with apprenticeships, if they get the minimum apprenticeship wage, they're still going to have to pay a additional top up onto that rent, because housing benefit will be reduced through what's supporting people put into the pot. And basically what they're saying is, well, it's still not realistic, because say I'm going out, I might be earning £94, a week, but I'm losing £40 of that, I'm being left with £50, I'm going out making an effort, I'm only £5 better off than you know, Laura, who's in the next room to me, that's
not doing anything.
Doing
Well,
nothing.
this is the thing about the reforms today. You've got to actually end a situation where somebody is very much off for being in work.
Okay.
So what's your story? How did you go?
what have you done since?
Where are you from? You're from Blackpool, which part?
Yeah, I'm from like all over really, because as you know, since I've just left care, so I've been placed all
How many
over
foster homes
Blackpool.
were you in? Was it just last night?
About, I don't know, about 6 or 7, and then I moved into a children's home.
Was that really so unsettling moving around so much?
It was, but I'd done it when I was living with family anyway, so that side of it didn't bother me. It was more the fact that I had like different people. I'd wake up and there'd be different people there instead of the time before.
Laura went into local authority
Yeah.
care at the end.
Are you still in contact with your family on that?
Some of it, not all of them. So,
Most of us are.
So what happens? When did you leave school?
this year.
Oh, right.
June.
So what's happened since?
Since then I've like moved into like a semi-independent living like thing. I went to college and then like, I couldn't. I had to get signed off ill. I had that problem in my back. And then I've only recently gone back to college.
So you're getting benefit support at the same time, or not?
No, the only thing I get is like my leaving care money, which is like £41 a week. So,
We did actually access, through Care to Work, we drafted 2 papers that the core leadership team within the authority agreed. One was year 10 and 11 work experience within the authority, and also work placements, apprenticeships within the authority for a 12-month period. Now Laura, we identified, would have got a placement within our vehicle maintenance department. She wants to be a mechanic basically. As Jeff put it, it's something not since my Navy days, a grease monkey.
If we're being politically correct.
But obviously because they lost the area-based grants and the threat of redundancies within the authority, it was a case of we had to pull the plug on that and temporarily suspend it purely because we couldn't afford to put the likes of Laura into a situation where somebody may have potentially lost the job.
So what proportion of, this is really quite an important issue obviously, what proportion of young people in the kind of position you guys are in, neither of you two are on normal wage work benefits. So there's a danger you fall through the system in terms of advocates, unless you're playing JSA or whatever, you're out of sight. What proportion of the people you're dealing with in that position?
Quite a few, because one of the problems with Blackpool, we are a very small town. We're not just a tower ballroom, big protruding tower, 3 piers. That's cosmetic. You get there, you can drive down any main road in Blackpool, and it's fantastic. Oh, look at that house, that house.
Yeah.
You get behind the cosmeticness there,
Yeah.
and you get the estates.
Yeah.
No different to Moss Side or anywhere else, just a lot more smaller.
Yeah.
Therefore, we have got quite a large group, and the reason I brought Adam and Laura down is to show this side of it, because they're not just mainstream need, they need, but they're also young people that have got criminal records. They might be spent records, you know, or anything other. It don't make any difference. It's really difficult in that small town to access employment for this client group. We're quite fortunate, thanks to B&M, that they did upset us last year by saying they're going to move their warehouse to Speak. Speak couldn't cope with it, so it's gone back to Blackpool. So they're panicking now, and what they're doing is they've opened doors to anybody. So we're getting our young people, this client group, into employment, albeit something they might not want. But it is money, and they are prepared to work. We just need more opportunities. But to get them opportunities, we need money, we need that investment being brought into Blackpool. And I don't just mean the casinos, and I call it TAC, seaside TAC. And I'm talking about full-on employment, sustainable employment for local young people, not just for the transients coming into Blackpool that are going to come in, stay till October, November, season ends, and then they just add to our unemployment list, you know, which then takes away more opportunities for these guys, and even the adults really, because at the end of the day, these are the young adults, these are the adults of the future, aren't they? So without getting these into sustainable employment, you know, 99.9 of them have not got the means to travel outside of Blackpool. We've got wire and filed either side, then it's just totally rural between Preston and Lancaster. There's nothing for them, so unless something's brought into that town, I mean, I could get really political in regards of how our elected members are utilising money. I can see the positives of it, because it will bring people into Blackpool, bring revenue in, and it will create some employment, but it's very minimal employment.
And I having gone beyond that nice fascia of seafronts, is upon realising that it not only had, say, young people born and bred in Blackpool, it had new citizens of Blackpool, either by way of escaping their own social and cultural settings.
Yeah, we've got Polish communities which have integrated really well.
It really did, for me, epitomise and reflect whatever you look like came from, identified with. You could have everything from a disaffected young person to a gang member. I mean, the shorefront now has been taken over by an Eastern European element that I only became aware of when I went to buy some rock.
Numbers have declined actually recently, yeah.
Okay.
Just going back to what you said before, that if I understood it correctly, you seem a bit concerned that if a young person isn't claiming a mainstream benefit like JSA, that they might slip through the net and remain neat. But they don't in Blackpool, because we've got the Connextions service and we've got the leave and care service. So Laura, I don't know if you still have or will have had an aftercare PA, and she's got a Connextions PA, and then because Laura and Adam have both been with the yachts, I'm seconded from Connextions to the yacht. We've got me as well. So in Blackpool we're brilliant at supporting people like that so they don't fall through the net. My concern is what's going to happen when we just go purely careers and the numbers shrink because of, you know, the redundancies.
Well, that was I'm still thinking the same kind of question, not so much in terms of what happens to Connextions, but actually what happens to you. How old are you?
16.
So you'll be with Connextions for another couple of years. How old are you? 19. So, but, I mean, you would fit the position now that if you are 19, you're not working, you're not playing in JSA, which means you're not on the radar at all.
He's still with us until his 20th birthday, unless he's got some sort of special need.
This is what I can't understand. I mean, I don't know, has anybody from Young People Services contacted you, Elliott, at all, from Connextions?
Well, they used to. Like,
I'm writing up a case study around Elliott. It's 5 years worth. He's been completely failed, and he's about to enter into the youth justice system. And this is where I found he exemplified and demonstrated fully where the gaps are, where there are some areas doing it better than others. But for me, where is that common framework and model that everybody understands by way of the language, where you enter, where you might step out for a bit but come back in, and it's consistent so that you can develop dependent on the individual and their life circumstances or situation. Because for me, it was watching. I gave him a watch at an event because it was his timekeeping, and I thought he's sorted. 5 months later, everything that was supposed to be provided in that service wasn't there. And then the next time he surfaced, it was as part of the youth offending team. And I thought, well, what happened? And it now is costing society.
So what did you do, if you don't mind me asking? What did you do, if you don't mind me asking?
To get on the offenders.
So yeah.
Get what, 12 units, like robbed the house.
To get the bit that he needs to do, that he should already have by way of earning it.
I mean, there is just that void. Services should have picked you up, not just from Connections or Young People Services, but it's, you know, going back to Blackpool, and I said one of the questions Emily's just put forward there about
About what's going to
happen in the future. Because I mentioned at the beginning about, you know, this research that takes place down south, you know, that they don't even, you know, they can't get their head around chips and curry sauce, chips and gravy. Do you know what I mean? And they eat jelly deals. It's a case of we've achieved our targets. We're a unitary body to Lancashire. We've achieved our targets year in, year out, since Connections not only came into the local authority, but prior to that, even though we are restricted in what we can offer young people, whether it's employment, further education, higher education, foundation learning, etc., or E2E as it used to be. The problem with us now is that with the spending review, we know the final nails have gone into the coffin for Connections, what with the Old Age Career Service coming into place in September next year. The likelihood, this is from our perspective, is as of the 4th of February next year, we'll more than likely get our redundancy notices. That's not me making it up or speculating, it's fact. There's going to be a void between April the 6th and September 2011. That's if it happens, purely because the government have stop-started on 2 occasions now with the All Age Career Service to say, yes it will, no it won't, yes it will, no it won't. And now we've got a date, what's going to happen in the middle? As a unitary authority, who's going to pick the likes of Elliott, Adam and Laura up, or the mainstream NEETS? Massive void, massive implications on the community, the employers, and the people.
Okay, well, I mean, the answer in part, but there's an obvious problem here, is that the work programme we launch next year, starting in the spring, basically spring and the summer, would provide kind of proper back to work support for young people, generally over the age of 18, who are on JSA. I think the interesting question, which you've highlighted, you're on DLA but you're not on JSA. Is there any reason why you're not?
Not really heard about it.
Can you claim that?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
You
Can you?
yeah,
I mean, you ought
can
to.
claim.
The obvious thing is you ought to be. I mean, the way I would want to catch you, not in a kind of finger on the collar sense, but the way I want to kind of support your case is you're 19, you've not got a job, you ought to be getting job seekers allowance, being helped by Job Centre Plus for a while to try and find a job, and then go into a much more intensive support programme.
There should actually be something, Chris, in. Is it Salford you're from, Elliott?
Yeah.
There should actually be something there. We've got. Have you heard of Positive Steps into Work that we've got in Blackpool? Basically, what Positive Steps do, they work alongside us, but it's primarily for the 18 plussers that have either been on incapacity, delay,
Yeah.
but they're actually searching to get back into employment or training.
Well, this is what the work programme will do, for want of a better way of explaining it. It will be a network around the country of organisations, big and small, probably bigger ones in the bigger centres, smaller ones in the smaller centres than in the individual towns. And their job is to take people who've been out of work for a period of time and give them extra support to get into the workplace, whether it's confidence building, whether it's interview techniques, whether it's job placements, whether it's trying to match an individual to an opportunity that they'll be best suited to do. And what it's doing is it's replacing a lot of the patchworks of DWP support you've got at the moment, the various new deals that are out there, and some of the smaller programs. And actually, I mean, guess what I would say is, in your particular case, I don't know what's going to happen to you career-wise, and we're going through some difficult times in the public sector. But one of the places I think there will be genuine opportunities is the work programme gets going next year. The local providers who will be providing the service, and there will certainly be an organisation doing it for Blackpool, will, I suspect, be looking for people who've got experience in dealing with young unemployed people, people.
I'm not too worried about me, I'm just worried about the service we provide for our service users.
But what's very interesting about this conversation is that in terms of making sure people get picked up, over the age of 18, if you're on job seekers allowance, and particularly if you're somebody who's been out of work for a long time, you get picked up pretty quickly and get really intense programme support. Yeah. The interesting problem is what we do in a case like yours where you're not on JSA, unless anyone's actually taking you to say actually you could be and you should be. And obviously somebody in your position, you're under the age of 16, under the age of 18, and so therefore you're not on job seekers allowance. I need to give that some thought. What's your story? Tell me more about you.
Not much to say really about me.
Where are you from?
I'm from Blackpool.
Okay. Which part?
North Shore.
Oh, okay. Were you in care as well or not?
No, I'm for Youth Energy.
Oh, right, okay.
Got into trouble because I needed way of finding money for me, because I couldn't get money for me.
How old are you?
I'm 17.
Right. So you weren't on benefits at that point, there's not much you can get between 16 and 18. So what happened home-wise? Were you booted out of home at some point, or are you still?
There was a lot of problems between me and my family and that, so I moved out.
Yeah.
I moved in with a friend, got into a lot of trouble with the police. It went through court and all of that. Ended up in York. Then I found I got Connextions PA. Never knew my PA worked for anything.
Yeah.
I got MLA, and then they got me back in college.
Yeah.
Helped me a lot. I mean, I'm going back to I left college,
yeah,
but I'm going back into college in a couple of weeks. I start back. But the one thing I found very hard about the money-wise at the moment is I've got an 8-month-old daughter.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not getting money off the government or anything. I don't get money for myself, so I'm struggling to provide at the moment anyway,
yeah,
for myself and my daughter.
Yeah.
The problem being as well, Adam's situation, just rewind a wee bit, to when he moved out of the family home.
Yeah.
Through estrangement, and he's under 18, he's not eligible to claim JSA.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he's using a care of address.
Yeah.
If you're 18 and over, yes, you can.
Yeah.
So we've got quite a few young people in Blackpool in that situation that present to either Connextions, or they go to Street Life or homelessness team housing.
Yeah.
And all we can do is offer them a night shelter. Even by offering them a night shelter, they're still not eligible to use that as a care of address. Whereas say it's Emily that's homeless and Laura, they both pitch up at the same time. Emily can just toddle off afterwards to the job centre, put down night shelter as a care of. There's your 40 odd quid. I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do for you. We can look at putting you in the foyer.
And there's
no...
As you know, in Blackpool, there's another side where young girls are put, in my view, in a very exposed and dangerous position, because they only have their own resources. They've only got themselves by way of making and earning and achieving some sort of status. I remember being asked by a Connections worker to come to Blackpool on a Monday morning, and I'd get a shock. And it was just girls pushing prams. And I'll never forget it. There was no one else. I'd never seen that many girls pushing prams in my life. But they were the ones that had fallen through the net. I'd seen them at the foyers. And if they weren't getting the allowance, they'd go, of course we're going to go on the game. Or of course we're going to be befriended with them. well, how are we going to get our money? And I think there really is a need to understand that moral line
do you
that they're
think
forced to cross.
If you are, I mean, you guys are clearly struggling because the support hasn't been there. If you are a 16-year-old girl instead, is it, given the nature of support, the issues around support, what you're saying, Jeff, is it's easier to have a family than do anything else?
If you speak to Corinne, she might add that final bit. When I met Corinne as the sister of Elliott, she was the brightest of her year, and the things she was going to achieve were extraordinary. The next thing I know, she was to become a mum, and the next time I saw her, she brought a baby in, and with Elliott now, he's an uncle of 2. Additions to the family. 3, right. Yeah, that's right. Simone's had another. Simone was going to come, but she's at college, thankfully. But I think it's interesting seeing Corinne's perspective, because she had it all in potential, but even now, I mean, she's going back to college, but I'm interested in knowing where, how, but what does it mean now for you?
I don't know what you mean.
How
Well,
old
you
are you?
asked the question.
17.
So when she's your first.
Yeah.
So what were you doing before she came along?
At college.
Right. So you left school at 16 and went to college.
Yeah.
And what were you doing at college?
Football coaching.
Okay. So do you coach at weekends?
No, I did the course, and then because I couldn't do the practical because I was pregnant during the course, I had to just do the written work, and I did the written work and I passed it.
So you're involved with the team at weekends and also?
No.
So what made you want to do football coaching?
I don't know.
That'd be good. I mean, it's that'd be good, a good thing to pursue. So how much of a difference does it make to your circumstances to have that and not to have that, money-wise and otherwise?
I don't know, because if it wasn't, I don't know.
But you're at home, aren't you?
Yeah.
You've got your mother supporting you.
Yeah.
But it's just showing the difference of having a family unit that does provide the additional support compared to those who have no family
You
unit.
tend to find as well, say Corinne, for example, if it's had a little, it'd be a case of, they might find it struggling, they might not be eligible for benefits. The easy option then, is I think that's the way you're coming from, is that they fall pregnant through choice.
Absolutely.
Just because then they get that element of benefit, they get fast tracks through the accommodation.
You soon realise that's not happening in Blackpool, they don't.
We've clamped down in Blackpool.
They just end
that
up
way.
in the mother and baby unit,
Yeah.
don't they?
But it was a massive...
It was
massive,
at one
massive.
stage.
There's a lot of work gone into re-educating the young girls in
Has
Blackpool.
that changed things, the mother and baby unit?
Well, it just means that they don't end up in, they think they're going to get a council house, and the reality is they end up in the mother and baby unit. I don't know
what
what...
The word goes around, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does go around. I mean, I don't know what the figures are for teenage pregnancy. I think they have fallen a bit in Blackpool. It's not my area.
But I mean,
There
with the
are people
introduction,
your age who...
There's quite a few people I used to go to school with, I think 7 or 8 of the girls who were in my year who have kids of their own now.
Do you think they intended to?
Some of them did, some of them didn't, and there's a few that were in like my situation who were brought up in care, being a care system.
Yeah.
And to be honest, there's not a lot that care system can do for it if you get put in, as Emily said, you get put in a mother and baby unit or something like that. They don't just help you as much as they can. They can I don't know how to explain.
The reality is teenage mums aren't getting the nice council house. Like sometimes it's portrayed on the news what they get. It's not the reality at all.
You don't believe everything you read in the papers, that's for sure.
No, we haven't got an abundance of council houses to just dish out. But no, I think we're working on the problem. I do think it's getting better in Blackpool, and plus we've got the Awaken project, which is there to support young girls and boys that are at risk of sexual exploitation, which is fantastic.
I think also with the introduction of the common assessment framework as well, that we use, that we identify a young person. Let's use a teenage mum for an example. It's the mother and baby unit. As a personal advisor, what Emily can do is pull all of the raise a CAF, pull all of the stakeholders together. So that could be anything from midwives, the accommodators, social care, housing, even a job centre to some extent.
Yeah.
So at least it's down there, everybody gets a bite-sized chunk, so right there you go Chris, what we need to do is sort out the benefits for this young girl and feedback. And it works, and we have done that in Blackpool. Like I say, it's hard, but we achieve. I mean, when we went through the lost the area-based grants in the summer, one thing as a unit we sat down and said was, you know, I mean, we would gladly have wrung the elected members' necks at the time, you know, especially being told within a 48-hour period. But it's not the young people's fault. So we've still got a duty of care to these. And we've got to make sure that we put our own personal differences to one side, and we still give them 110%. You know, even if they come in and they wind you up as teenagers do, especially Laura. But we're still there. We still do. That's the thing we do, and we're like that at moments. And it's unless we get the tools to enable us to actually, irrespective of what's going to happen next year, we need them tools to enable us to do something for these guys. Because it's all right them coming in and having a voice, but unless we can actually act on it and be proactive with it, you might as well get on the beach with a bucket and spade and dig yourself a hole, because you're going nowhere.
And my additional concern is that with all and just trying to get to know what's available, and Elliott doesn't even know what's available. There is so much available. Can it not be made as a language and a provision that's a little bit more holistic, a little bit more clearer and consistent, but more importantly, once the benefit system, the welfare support isn't there and not as good as it could be, there is an alternative lifestyle choice that they're able to move into far too quickly, far too incentivised, and it becomes another impact of whether it's social.
Well, so what you're saying, you've raised the question of the option of, you know, well, you either end up going and finding the money you need in the way you do it, or you end up finding other ways of getting money from the state.
And there is an antisocial gang-related radicalised element. I'm seeing the young people, they wouldn't come in here today. What they convey back is, we made a choice, and we're doing very well, and we're enjoying it. And we don't want a queue. We don't, you know, and you say, well, what would incentivise you? And it's the things that give them the credibility and the status in the lifestyle they want to live. And if they can get the sportswear, and they can get from A to B, and they can talk and text and message their friends, and they can get a trip out to escape whatever, you know, unrealistic environment they're in, they're happy. And that's where I felt, you know, as you say, as the education maintenance allowance go, I mean, my son's mates are all moaning. My son doesn't get, and he was moaning that all my mates get EMA, why don't I get it? I said, well, that's my fault. And you know, they blame me for something else. But what I'm saying is, they're now panicking because they know they're not going to get it. But they're all coming up with pretty ingenious ways of how they're going to take it. And I'm saying we've got to start giving them an alternative incentive that they do earn, and if they're on these programs and they're prepared to work, we've got to find a replacement. And that's when I went to the private sector and said, look, if this is an important motivator for them, surely we can get in your marketing spend and other areas an incentive linked to their learning, linked to their vocation and their work placement and work programs, so that we start to fill that gap. Because my concern is those on the streets are pretty shrewd.
There's a good example of the awards last night. Was it the Heroes in the Community Awards type thing? There's a young guy there that had gone through the Prince's Trust. He was
shop,
dealer,
yeah.
been convicted, done drug running, been a mule, done everything. And he got on the team project with Prince's Trust. They turned his life around. Prince's Trust is in Blackpool, for example. It is in Manchester. But it's only a very, very small element. They can only take a small amount. And they brought him from, not just Blackpool, but from Wire and File. What we need is more funding for social inclusion, for more economic development. You know, like I said, I'm not on about, I don't care what people are on about the casinos, or who gets it, Manchester or Blackpool. Forget that. This is real term stuff that, you know, is going to give all these kids that opportunity. You know, it's that
need to
ladder.
be something that they can relate to nationally in their local environment. Because for me, there are just so many different initiatives, so many different programs, so many different funding streams. It's great to have choice, but at that age they need some consistency, they need some sustainability, and more importantly, they need to know that it's a two-way process. That's what we said, what you put in is what you get out. because as you know, most of the incentives come to those that already know how to play us and wind us up, and normally know how to play the system anyway.
Yeah.
But I think it's having a national programme that everyone can be proud of, everyone can be part of, and as you say, the agency the policy directors in the schools.
There's one area one area I did get from Chris was that you reflected quite a lot on the 18 pluses. My concern, I think families is up to 18, because obviously Adam and Laura are the future Elliots.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the ones that have been in this situation at 16 and 17. We were only discussing this on the way down, that 18 and 19-year-olds in the community, if they've not done anything in that first 2-year period at 16 and 17, that is the road. That is where most of our work is
How
there.
long is it? I mean, as an indicator, after somebody leaves school, how long after leaving school should the alarm bells ring?
It's immediate with our service, because they
but in terms, some people go to school, they know where they're going, they go to college and so forth. And some people, you can't say that anybody from any background is not going to be able to do it, because lots can. But equally, sometimes life doesn't work that way. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to understand is you don't want to kind of try and have a system that grabs everyone at the school gate, but how long after leaving school, if somebody's still not sorting themselves out, should we kind of have some kind of alarm bell that rings?
Can I honestly say it needs to be before they leave that school gate?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because honestly, that's where they are susceptible to all, sometimes the wrong choices and lifestyle pursuances. The bell needs to be rung before they leave. I went to a school, Knutsford High, gave the awards out, gave the talk, and there were 3 you could see, and they had that look in their eye. And I said to the principal, and he said, "Yeah, it looks as though we've lost them." I said, "Why?" "Why? I will no longer our responsibility." We sort of just had a word with us. "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" He didn't know. And I said to the principal, I said, "You don't have to advocate your responsibility. By the way, that you got your pass targets met." Do you understand? And those that don't get the exams, don't get the career choices and ambitions realised, are normally unlikely to therefore take that path.
How many GCSEs did you do?
I did 6 GCSEs.
And what the order did you get?
All about the same, but that's because I never put anything into it when I was there.
That's the point, the incentive.
You're going to have another go at some point.
Pardon?
You're going to have another go at some point.
Definitely. But from what you were saying before, I think you should already know what you want to do before you leave school. I knew in year 9 or end of year 8, I knew exactly what I want to do, and I'm still going to do it.
What do you want to do?
I want to be a mechanic, and I want
Oh,
to
of course,
go
you're saying the
mechanic.
big, sorry, you said, that's right.
So, and I've wanted to do that for a long time, and just because of my back now, once I've done my physiotherapy, I'm going straight back in there, because that's something I've said for an awful long time that I want to do.
So were you doing the mechanics course?
Yeah, I did it through year 10 and 11, and then my doctor decided to tell me I couldn't do it for a while, but I am going to do it, because if you don't have that to go off in school or at the end of the school, you're not going to get anywhere, you're not going to have a job, you're not going to know what you want to do, and if you don't, then you're just going to be a bum all your life, getting all the money you can off the dole or something like that, and there's no point. It's like stealing from other people in my eyes. You're taking the money that other people need.
It is like we're saying all this about that transition from school, from year 11 through to post 16. I can only speak on behalf of Blackpool. Now, our staff will work from year 9, inclusive of every single young person at that specific school, for example. Let's use Beacon Hill. They'll take them all the way through, and as Laura said, I think that's a very relevant point, that everybody knows what they're going to do, to some extent. The ones that say they don't are the ones that have been in the TNE group, no matter what. So we get the transition. We have got a college personal advisor in the 2 main colleges we've got in Blackpool, the 6th form or more the vocational side. These young people have picked up now, I said right at the very, very beginning, about the breakdown in communication between colleges informing us of what learners have actually started to enable us then to go out and start knocking on doors,